Hi, this is Matthias from mamoworld.com, and today we animate this cool animation here in After Effects. Let's get started. So here is our design in After Effects, and now we want to animate it. But before we start animating, I want to explain you quickly how I created this design. Like the first part of the series, this design is also inspired by some font pack of Adobe fonts. And this time I do not just have the fonts here, I also have some shapes in the background. And this is actually a brain shape, which you will only notice if we scale it down a bit. This was because this text is about brains. I thought, well, maybe I can combine this with a brain shape, and I ended up to just use this tiny portion of it. But it's always a good idea to bring in some shapes in your design. In this case, this shape is taken from Pixabay. So on Pixabay, I just searched for brain, and you can see there are tons of vector graphics with brain shapes. And I actually used a rather abstract one, namely this one here. And a little extra tip, if you've got a vector graphic like this brain shape here, you can bring this in your After Effects composition. Maybe let me scale it down a little bit. And then if you right click on it, and then you choose Create Shapes from Vector Layer, then After Effects will create a shape layer in After Effects based on these vector graphics. I can delete the original layer, and now this is a normal shape layer where you can go into the contents, into the individual shapes, modify them, change their color, and all these kinds of things. And this is how I created this shape here. But now let's start with animating this. And I animated the text again with our extension Squash and Stretch Pro. And since this was about speed bumps, I thought let's find a behavior that fits to this topic. So what I ended up using was, let me search for wheel, the slide in wheelie behavior, which looks like this. And I want to apply it to this speed bump text here. So I click on the work area button to know how long this animation is. I go to the end of the work area, and with timing set to end of behavior, I apply it. Now Squash and Stretch asks me if it should split this layer into individual letters, and in this case, yes, we want to animate each letter individually. So I click OK, and we get a bunch of individual layers of our text here, and each of them is animated individually. The result looks like this. And now to make this look a little bit less regular, what I want to do next is I just move a few frames forward here. Let's say maybe something like 12 frames or so. And just take one of the letters and move it there. Now I select all letters and click here on the stagger layers function. And in the stagger layers, I make sure I want to stagger the in points. I want the order to be random. Yeah, you can also do a regular staggering here, ascending, descending, but I want an entirely random order, and the randomness should be a lot, and I click OK. And now all these layers start at a different point in time, and so now the animation looks a little bit more interesting. Okay, for the other text, I want to animate them in with a less spectacular behavior because I really want to have the focus on this cool animating main text here. So for the other ones, I go with the basic in. So let's search here for basic in. And now let's just check for the timing. Maybe we go for the fast variant. And we want these other texts to appear behind this line, so therefore we don't want the animation to come from the left, but I click here to flip it. Now it comes from this side, and I take all those layers here, and again with timing set to end of behavior, I want to know how long this behavior is. It's just that short, so I move the work area here, and now I know here is exactly the point in time where this animation should end, and I click on apply. This time I don't want each letter to be animated individually here to keep my project simple and don't have too many layers. I just say no, don't split, which means it stays with these 3 layers that animate as one object. And the main limitation of this is essentially that it also deforms as one object. But you can see, for example, here, if you look at this D, or let's first take a look at this animation. You can see it looks like a very basic easy ease in animation, more or less, and pretty fast one. But if you look at it closely, you can see when it stops here, you can see how those letters are deforming. Here the T is bended, for example, and the D. And these are the little details that really make your animation look more professional. It's like not very distracting, but still way more than just a simple animate in with an easy ease keyframe. So the deformation here really adds a lot to this. And the only thing that I don't like at this point yet is that these letters should appear behind this line. So what I therefore do is I click somewhere to have no layer selected. You can click in this area here to deselect any layers, and I create a new shape layer. I click here, and now the shape layer should cover this area behind our line that where this text should be hidden. Yeah, and I call this here, I name it matte, and now I move it below the above actually the first text, so it's already where it should be, above my text. And now if I click here to reveal my track matte options, I set the track matte of this text here to alpha inverted, which inverted means like in this area where I've drawn my shape, the text should not be visible. And now you can see that this first text appears here behind the line. And I just duplicate this matte layer and move it also above the second text, duplicate it another time and move it above this text. And then I make sure I set this here also to alpha inverted. And I also set this one here to alpha inverted. And now all these texts just appear behind this line. Now I want to refine the timing of these two texts here a little bit. So actually I first want only this first text to appear. And now when this text arrived at about this time here, I want the second text, I move it over with its matte. I want this to start animating. And then the third one should still go just a few frames later. Like this maybe. Let's see how this is looking like. Now all the text come in step by step here. Nice. And now the only thing I don't like yet is that this line here is static and not animating yet. So what I want to do with this line is just a simple scale and position animation. So I click the S key and then I hold Shift and click P to reveal both scale and position. And let's say maybe here right before this text occurs. So this is exactly here. At this point, I want the line to be at its final scale and position. And just a few frames before that, I want it to move down. Yeah, I want it from a lower position to move up. And at the same time, I also want to scale it. And I just want to scale it in Y direction. So I unlink here and make sure it starts just like as a little point. And I want to ease in the animation into the end location, so it stops smoothly, essentially. So I right-click on the last keyframe, say keyframe assistant, easy ease in. So finally, I move the start point of this layer here, the in point of this layer, to the point where this animation starts. And now the line appears, behind the line the text appears, and this is our final animation. So here is our final result. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and here's a little preview of what we are going to create in the next part of this series. See you there.